Welcome to a brand new episode of the Jampack Report today for May the 11th of 2020. Of course, my name is Samuel Adams, and this is a daily gaming news podcast meant to bring you the hottest news you need to know from around the industry. Hosted on YouTube and podcast services around the world 5 days a week, it is your one-stop shop for all of the hottest news you need to know. So, if you enjoy the show, you like what you see, what you hear, hit that subscribe button on your platform of choice and keep yourself in the loop and in the know and tuned into the show. Oh, I did a little bit of a spin-off on that intro there. However, enough of me just listening to myself in the mic. Let's dive into today's hottest news, which includes Ubisoft's announcement of a new Direct-like presentation with exciting reveals called Ubisoft Forward coming this July. Now that E3 is nixed for 2020 and packed live press conferences are on hold for a while, pretty much everyone is clamoring to create Nintendo Direct-style video presentations. We have said this before, but Nintendo really was ahead of its time when it comes to these. Several publishers are opting to pull out of formal June E3 conferences, instead sharing the spotlight with others in showcases like Summer Game Fest. Now we know that Ubisoft will be holding an event of its own called Ubisoft Forward on July 12th. Little is known about the event, but Ubisoft says it will be an E3-style showcase with exclusive game news, exciting reveals, and plenty more. It is easy to speculate about what they are going to show. We need a Watch Dogs Legion update for sure, as well as more news on Gods and Monsters and Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and there is also a lot of other projects floating around like Roller Champions, which had a pre-alpha demo last year. Mark your calendars. Again, it's going to be a long summer of these things. Indeed it is. Of course, there are going to be many digital events hosted over the course of the next few months, but what can we expect from Ubisoft on July the 12th? Personally, I'm thinking that there's going to be a lot of Assassin's Creed Valhalla after the fan backlash from last week's event that showcased quote-unquote gameplay. They're going to have to do some kind of giant 30 to 45 minute demo showing actual gameplay of the game itself being played. On top of that, Watch Dogs Legion has me concerned because of the fact that I think that a lot of people have simply forgotten about it. It seems to be one that has no weight in the minds of the gaming population. People just aren't concerned about it, and that's a game that certainly does show a lot of promise. You can essentially be any NPC in the game. That's amazing, and I think that definitely does bring a lot of value. It brings something new. And I want to hear more about where that project is going. But even more so than that, what's going on with Skull and Bones? What's the status on Beyond Good and Evil 2? These are games that we have been hearing about for years on end, and there is still no movement. I really think Ubisoft needs to sit down and say, hey, we need to either delay these indefinitely, we need to get these out, because a lot of fans are just trying to figure out what's going on over at one of the biggest developers in the world, and I would love to see what their teams have to show. But who knows, maybe we could be seeing some future content for Rainbow Six Siege. I would almost guarantee you that there's going to be a next generation port of that game because it is so popular worldwide, and they can essentially use it as a platform and just continue to build on it year after year. On top of that, Rainbow Six Quarantine, what's going on with that one? There are a lot of big question marks in the Ubisoft catalog, and I would love to get a definitive timeline for releases from them. However, Ubisoft Forward, again, the big new event, is going to be held on July the 12th if you do want to sit down and see what the next year or so of Ubisoft has to offer. Looks like a pretty interesting showcase, to say the least. But Call of Duty studio Sledgehammer is now working on multiple projects. Sledgehammer was founded in 2009 and is best known for Call of Duty titles Advanced Warfare and World War II. The California-based developer has navigated a challenging period in recent years with the departure of its founders Michael Condrey and Glenn Schofield in 2018, and more recently reports have surfaced that it had co-leadership of a premium Call of Duty game moved to another studio. Both Condrey and Schofield established new studios close to their old company, and dozens of Sledgehammer employees reportedly left to join them. Speaking to VentureBeat this month, Sledgehammer's new COO Andy Wilson, a former executive at 2K's Hangar 13 studio, said the company had a clear path for the future. Sledgehammer now has about 200 people working in its studios in both Foster City, California and Melbourne, Australia, Wilson said, and it plans to add 100 more developers over the next year. On some staff leaving, the COO said, quote, "Our industry tends to see a lot of movement in general. The gaps between projects usually coincide with a larger number of people deciding to make a change. That said, the story of the last year for us has been one of solid growth. We are not looking in the past. We are excited about where we're headed, and our focus is on looking forward." One of Wilson's first tasks since joining Sledgehammer was to launch an initiative called Decade 2, he said, and set a roadmap for the future. The great thing about Decade 2, Day 1, was that was actually the endpoint of months of solid work to establish a clear plan for the future, he explained. The result is a team and studio with a clear roadmap and an enormous opportunity ahead of it, with a lot of great new team members signing up for the journey. Activision claimed last week that the next Call of Duty game, on which Sledgehammer is understood to be a support studio, is on target to hit its planned 2020 release window. It is also understood that the studio is working on a free-to-play Call of Duty spin-off aimed at a broader audience than the recently launched Warzone. In another interview with VentureBeat last week, Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick said the company was changing the trajectory of Call of Duty. Quote, "I think it started last year with the Modern Warfare launch and mobile, and I think Call of Duty Warzone did a good job of bringing back lapsed Call of Duty players, but it's also introducing new players." So it looks like Sledgehammer is working on some interesting projects, of course, more than likely both associated with the Call of Duty name, but I'm interested to see what this free title is, because it's clear that free-to-play is working. If you look at the success of Warzone, it's clear that people want that kind of accessibility where the price is no object, and I would love to see what a free-to-play Call of Duty game actually looks like when it's not a battle royale. How do you create a platform that can be built off of and that can be funded through the purchase of cosmetics or season passes? You can do this, and we've seen it done with Fortnite, we've seen it done with Apex Legends, we've seen it done now with Warzone. There's plenty of opportunity to expand beyond that traditional $60 Call of Duty game model. But that's not going to be going away anytime soon, because people continually buy these Call of Duty games. And I talk about this time after time, but it's always worth reminding people that you have gamers out there, probably those that don't listen to podcasts, that pick up Madden and they pick up Call of Duty, maybe an NBA 2K. They have these just select few games that they get year after year, and that does them for the entirety of the year. And so I think that Call of Duty has such a power in the gaming industry, and it has such a large share of the public mind that you can't help but know it's going to be a dominant force no matter what the cost of it actually is. And as a free-to-play game, it's going to be massive. I mean, look at the launch of Call of Duty Mobile. It was record-breaking and continues to be very well received. However, that is just the beginning. Of course, Sledgehammer beginning Decade 2, and I wish them the best of luck because, hey, World War II was pretty good. Advanced Warfare, it had a good campaign. The multiplayer was kind of hit or miss, but regardless, I am a fan of what their studio has created. Speaking of new studios, Gravity Well is a new studio from veterans of Respawn Entertainment, building a smaller AAA team. Since its acquisition by Electronic Arts in 2017, Respawn Entertainment has been delivering critically acclaimed games, including Apex Legends and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Meanwhile, Respawn co-founder Vince Zampella is now studio head of both Respawn and DICE LA, the latter of which will soon be renamed. Still, with some of its members leaving, opportunity emerges, and now there is an exciting new independent studio on the scene. Gravity Well is an upcoming new team founded by some Respawn Entertainment vets, including former executive producer Drew McCoy and John Shiring. "We are starting a studio because of how we want to make games. We want time to iterate on everything and get ideas and feedback from the whole team. We are building this studio to last for decades, and that doesn't happen without putting the team first," McCoy explained. "We take team health as an absolute top priority. That means we are anti-crunch. That means good compensation. That means everyone at Gravity Well has creative freedom, because when someone else makes all the decisions, work isn't fun and the end product is not as good." Shiring explained that we are going to build a team that is 80 to 85 people at peak, and that once your team size crosses 100 people, everything changes. Gravity Well is setting up for remote work given the ongoing pandemic and is now taking job applications. Gravity Well is also setting out to build games exclusively for next-gen hardware and PCs. Given how the team is just now beginning to hire, it will probably be some time before we see its first game, but if you're interested in following Gravity Well, you can check out the official Twitter account, and I am going to drop that one a hot follow because I want to know everything about what they are working on. Now, what's interesting in this specific case is that this is going to be a direct comparison between what can be done at a AAA developer that does participate in crunch culture, that does force ideas of a select few at the top onto the team of developers that makes that happen. This is going to be something that is basically a case study. And I think that's very interesting, because what if Gravity Well becomes a giant AAA name where it is a hugely well-respected group of people creating incredible experiences without the crunch, without the low pay, and they have all of this opportunity to create something that is incredible without having to pay the price, whether monetarily or otherwise. That sounds very intriguing to me, especially in a day and age where so much of the talk around the gaming industry does involve poor compensation, bonus-based compensation, or in general, a lack of a work-life balance. I would love to see what happens when people are treated as regular employees, like you would find at a bank, or like you would find in any kind of other industry that does have that traditional kind of work-life balance and traditional work model. But hey, it could go the other way. I'm excited to see what happens, though, because, of course, if you have a couple of Respawn vets, you know they've seen some stuff, and you know they're probably going to come up with something pretty good looking. However, the Mafia Twitter account has returned with mysterious teasers, and of course, now there are 2 of them as of today. I'm going to go get the papers. The Mafia Twitter account has dropped a big old tweet after 2 years of dormancy, adding further fuel to the fire. The 2K Games has incoming announcements regarding the open world crime sim series. Yesterday, or I should say over the weekend, after 2 years of silence, @Mafia Game tweeted out one single word, family, followed today, Monday the 11th, by another tweet saying power. It's probably suggesting something altogether more sinister than your average Mother's Day blessing. There has been a flurry of whispers and rumors regarding the Mafia series recently, with definitive editions of both Mafia 2 and 3 showing up on Taiwan's video games rating board. This is not to mention the long-time whisper that Mafia 2 is in consideration to receive the remake/remaster treatment. Whatever 2K Games has up its sleeve, the reactivation of the Twitter account would suggest we'll be hearing something more concrete news. More concrete news real soon. Sure, why not? Up until then, keep your eyes open and your mouth shut, because you've got a beautiful restaurant here. Capiche? Haha, it's a Mafia reference. A couple of things to note here. If you go to the official Mafia game Twitter, you will see the profile picture remains the Mafia 3 logo, so you know that it's not going to necessarily be a Mafia 4, at least not yet. Now again, we have the word family, we have the word power. Seems to be, of course, you guessed it, Mafia related, but is it something to do with Vito from Mafia 2? Is it something to do with Mafia 3? Or is it just maybe a remaster of the original Mafia, which I know has been discussed as well? Personally, I have no idea, but I will tell you, those ratings from the Taiwanese Games Rating Board certainly, after from Sean Connery today, have some kind of weight to them. So hey, you could be getting a Mafia 2 Definitive Edition, but my question is, why wouldn't you wait until the PlayStation 5, unless this is going to be a cross-generation bundle, perhaps? Which would make a lot of sense, because if you brought Mafia 2 and 3 together, you could make a quick buck on the PlayStation 4, because Mafia 2 holds a lot of nostalgia for a lot of people, and then you could have that carry on over into the next gen. So at launch, you have 2 Mafia games, one of which never really got played, and that being Mafia 3. But excited to see where it goes. Definitive editions are my cup of tea. But a big event is going to be coming this summer. Of course, we have plenty of them. However, Guerrilla Collective is an online games festival that was announced today, featuring varying studios. E3 2020 may have been canceled, but the gaming industry is finding new ways to present its games and announcements through online showcases. Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest is rolling out with different events over the next couple of months, and meanwhile, several other developers and publishers have joined forces to announce the Guerrilla Collective. This festival of sorts will take place from June 6th through June the 8th and features developers and publishers such as Larian Studios, Coffee Stain, love Coffee Stain, Paradox Interactive, 11-Bit Studios, and more. This gaming conference is being hosted by Greg Miller from Kinda Funny, and it's being produced by Media Indie Exchange and Kinda Funny Game Showcase. We will have to wait and see just what this showcase has in store. Even with everyone practicing social distancing and staying at home, this is a great summer for video game announcements. I'm excited for this one as well. If I had to guess, this is going to be the Kinda Funny Game showcase of the Summer Game Fest, where if you have never watched KFGD, no, that's Kinda Funny Games Daily. Excuse, that's the podcast. Never mind. If you've never watched one of the giant Kinda Funny showcases, they are more indie focused. They're more focused on the niche side of the gaming industry, whereas these bigger events like the Summer Game Fest is focusing on the bigger AAA projects and the stuff you would normally see at E3. So the Guerrilla Collective Online Game Festival, I would say, is more than likely going to be similar in that regard, where you do have more of an indie approach than something that is primarily focused on the big AAA boys. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. That gives everybody a bit of time to shine, and I think that I'm going to be definitely tuning into this one. Again, this festival is taking place June the 6th through June the 8th, and I'm sure it's going to be promoted quite heavily online, so you can, if you do want to, dive in and give it a shot, give it a look on GuerrillaCollective.com. If you did want to give it a follow on Twitter, you can head to Guerrilla Collect over there, and I will follow that one as well. Lots of follows being given out on today's show. Now, this is an update that I did want to comment on because, of course, we have a report saying it will be years before we get any real Elder Scrolls 6 news, says Bethesda. Bethesda's Pete Hines was recently asked on Twitter if we are getting close to learning more about the Elder Scrolls 6. The publisher's marketing boss was very clear this will not happen anytime soon. Hines reiterated that for Bethesda, Starfield is currently its big focus. Realistically, don't expect any Elder Scrolls 6 news until Starfield is in our hands. It's after Starfield, which you pretty much know nothing about, Hines admitted to a Twitter follower. So if you are coming at me for details now and not years from now, I'm failing to properly manage your expectations. Nearly a year ago, Bethesda confirmed that Starfield will be out before The Elder Scrolls 6, and as Hines pointed out, we know nothing about Starfield at this time. Both games were unveiled at E3 2018 with a pair of CG trailers and not much else. Since then, Bethesda developers have not really talked about either of them publicly. Most of the publisher's focus has been on Fallout 76 and other projects from its own studios, such as Wolfenstein Youngblood and Doom Eternal. This year, Bethesda said it will not be hosting physical or digital events, but the publisher's name has popped up on showcases hosted by media outlets, so here's hoping. Here's my hypothesis, alright? If you look at what Bethesda is doing currently, there is tons of potential because you have a new Elder Scrolls game and a brand new IP. The sky is the limit here. However, at the same time, they are also taking their sweet time with this and have no event planned for 2020, which could be worrisome to some. But I personally choose to believe that they are developing one, if not two, brand new engines for games to run on, and they are preparing a revolution, a groundbreaking new slew of Bethesda games because, and I've said this before, and I'll point it out again, if you look at Fallout 3 versus Fallout 4, there are differences, but ultimately, it's kind of the same game. One looks much, much better, but even if you compare Fallout New Vegas to Fallout 4, there isn't much of an advancement. If you look at what we have with Fallout 76, again, essentially the multiplayer version of Fallout 4. There has to be some kind of advancement. If you look at Elder Scrolls 5, it's been, 8 years? Something like that since Elder Scrolls 5 came out? It's time to move on, but not if you can't iterate. I don't want Elder Scrolls 6 to be the Fallout 4 of Elder Scrolls. I don't want it to be just a marginal improvement in a brand new story that may or may not be good. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping for a revolutionary new evolution of Bethesda. But I suppose we will have to wait a few years before we actually hear more about it. And I wouldn't be shocked to hear nothing from Bethesda this year at all, which I think might be pretty good because that's almost a symbolic, symbolic, I guess, return to the desert to reflect on your findings, whatever it might be. I want them to come back with a fresh set of eyes on the entire situation. But hey, if you want to catch up on some of Bethesda's past games, it looks like your opportunity is coming up soon. The Steam Summer Sale 2020 dates have been leaked. It looks like the first major sale every year is undoubtedly its Summer Sale, and this year's version of the event will kick off in July. It is going to be live from June 25th to July 9th, a 2-week period. Of course, Valve did not actually announce those dates, as is always the case. Instead, the Steam caretaker has communicated them to Steam developers, and someone inevitably leaked the information. Steam database's Pavel Jundik dropped the news on Twitter. Apparently, the dates were initially leaked by Chinese developers before others corroborated them. And for what it's worth, those are the exact same dates for last year's summer sale. So hey, save up your money, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and get ready because, you know, Papa Gaben's coming through with the ice cream truck full of game deals. Not as good as years past. I remember when I first built the PC back in, I guess, 2015. The sale was still in its traditional model where you could get a game for $20 for the first 3 days, and then all of a sudden it's down to $2. It's that kind of excitement that I feel like built up the reputation of the Steam Summer Sale, and it's just not that anymore. It's a good sale, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic, but again, be responsible with your money. If you're not going to play the game and you have no intention to, don't buy it. Just saying. But that rounds out today's episode of the Jampack Report. If you enjoyed this show, be sure to drop me a like down below and let me know what you think about everything we talked about here today. What do you expect from Ubisoft this July? On top of that, are you looking forward to a brand new Mafia title or a remaster? Would love to see your thoughts on that one. Or what event are you going to be paying the most attention to this summer? The Summer Game Fest, IGN's big event, or perhaps something else entirely? Would love to see what you have to say down below. But until next time, you guys have a fantastic rest of your night. I'll talk to you tomorrow, and peace.